Oh my goodness. This is a ridiculous sale. This is probably the biggest sale I've ever seen on the eShop. As it stands, it's launching first in the European regions. There has never been a better time to set up an EU and US account on your Switch, depending on what region you're in, and pick yourself up some 10% discounted eShop credit using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg. If you'd rather not do that though, check out the list because you can guarantee this sale has to come over to the US in the next week or so, and some of the games may be available in your region. I'm not in the habit of doing giant lists, but I'm going to have to double down on this one. Usually one hidden gem, let's go for 2. Usually one kids pick, let's go for 2. And usually 8 other games, let's go for 16. As for avoids, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I'm going to have to cut the information down a little bit to make the list quicker to make, otherwise I'm going to never leave this room. But what is on sale, my friends? Well, let's find out. Starting off strong then with a 40% discount, taking it to its cheapest ever price, we have Hades at £13.49. Potentially one of, if not the best, roguelike action game we have on Switch. This one features a number of different weapon classes which you can use, a storyline that ties the whole experience together regardless of how many times you die, and some brutal boss fights. It's very fast action-paced combat, it does everything in an incredibly slick way with some beautiful music and narration. There's a good 100 hours of potential gameplay here in a 5.7GB package. As with all of these games, it's on sale until June the 19th. Just a cheers really to the SwitchUp family that have downloaded this one to support the channel in past episodes. It's sponsors like Raid Shadow Legends that mean we can actually carry on doing the thing we love. It's an entirely free turn-based RPG and it's constantly being updated. This month there's a focus on the Doom Tower, which is essentially a giant prison created by the Arbiter to house all the cretins she wasn't able to defeat. After 1,000 years it's almost like they don't want to be locked up anymore, and so it's up to you to climb to the top of the tower, and you're going to need an army. The regular floors as you work your way through the tower are actually fine. It's the boss fights that are going to give you more of a run for your money. There are a few in here that will need specific mechanics such as the Scarab King in order to defeat them. Some of the big events this month in Raid: there's an entirely new event for the summer solstice, a set of skins for the amazing Trunder Guilt Mallet, Raid still running a special Deliana Chase event, a new legendary champion from the High Elves faction. To get them you just need to log in and play for 7 days between now and July the 20th. If you click the link in the description or scan the QR code, you'll get unique bonuses worth $30, and you also support the channel that hopefully you enjoy: a free epic champion, Tayrel, 200k silver, 1 energy refill, 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard. And everything will be waiting for you right there. And as an added bonus, when you're in game, enter the code MyDeliana and you'll get 50 XP brews to instantly get the hero Deliana up to level 50, as well as a ton of silver. Then you know it and I know it, we must finish Xenoblade Chronicles and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and they're currently on a 33% discount each, which takes them down to about 33 quid. They're incredible games. I am desperately struggling to finish Xenoblade Chronicles 2 now. It has to be done before the new game comes out, and they encapsulate everything I love about gaming. I'm a huge fan of worlds that allow you to completely escape in them, but also those that have a grand vision. I guess in some ways they've become works of art, and Xenoblade Chronicles, the definitive edition, as well as Chronicles 2, in my opinion, fall well within that category. They're 13GB downloads, and you're looking at about, well, combined, 300 hours? 200 hours of gameplay? Definitely worth adding to your collection. Next up, we've got the outstanding and terrifying Alien Isolation. This matches its previous lowest. It's half price at £14.99, but it does have a chunky 17GB download. A brilliant first-person survival horror game. It sees you dodging in and out of vents, trying to avoid cyborgs, as well as the titular xenomorph. There was an incredible amount of AI and programming that went into its design, and if you haven't played this one, I highly recommend it. I'm not a huge fan of horror games, but even I was able to, slowly but surely, work my way through this terrifying experience. One of my absolute favourite games on Switch, and now at a new low price of just £7.85, that's a 67% discount, it's Spiritfarer. This is a beautiful game from Thunder Lotus Games, and they recently released a massive update that adds a load of new content. It sees you ferrying the spirits of the dead across a vast ocean, but you can be joined in co-op by your cat. It has an incredibly charming art style as well as audio track, and you can customise and build up that boat. A magnificent game. This one has a download size of 4.0 gigs and a playtime of around about 30 to 50 hours. This one never goes on sale. It's Dark Souls Remastered, an absolute classic. If for whatever reason you haven't played it, now is the time. In many ways, it shares many characteristics with a Metroidvania. There's that open world, you can choose exactly where to go, but it is nowhere near as difficult as the world makes out. In fact, compared to some of the more recent Souls games, it feels quite tame. Despite that though, you can still get lost in it if it's the first time you're picking it up and playing, and it runs well on the Nintendo Switch, and it includes the Touryst of the Abyss DLC. It's just £17.49, half price, and carries a very small 3.9GB download. You're looking at about 100 hours, really, at least, and then you probably play through with a different class, different weapons, etc. Well worth trying if you've not done so. Another absolutely great game on its lowest ever price is AI The Somnium Files, and there is a demo of this one available as well if you want to try it out. It's set within near future Tokyo, where you'll take on the role of Special Agent Kanami Date, who is on the case looking for a serial killer. You'll have to investigate a number of different crime scenes, but also you'll have to investigate dreams. It feels like an interactive anime, and it's expertly realised. As far as playtime, about 30 or 40 hours of gameplay, 80% off at the moment, and with a download, like I say, of 10.2 gigs. Then we've got the incredible Everspace Stellar Edition, now at its new lowest price of £14.39, that's a 60% saving. If you're at all a fan of space-based adventure games, then Rockfish really do have a good pedigree in this area. Now Everspace is a space-based roguelite, but don't be put off by that. It doesn't feel like your traditional roguelite. The story continues. I guess it's the reason that Hades is so enjoyable, because that story just continues between each run. And you can have different quest lines that you pick up that will also continue regardless of whether you die and have to respawn. You choose your path through the different areas. There's some really enjoyable combat, but make sure you change your controller options. Now we do have reviews of this one, so go check it out, and it tells you in there how to set up the controls to be best. This is one of my favorite games on Switch. It says here that the playtime is around about 50 to 60 hours, but I've spent at least 100. It's a Shin Megami 5 is at its cheapest ever price. It's down 33% to £33. This was one of our games that we got to review early from Nintendo. I think we had this and Triangle Strategy. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, they no longer do that. But Glen absolutely loved it. It's a fully fledged JRPG, and by all accounts, it fully does justice to the series. Now, as always, you're going to have some people that like, some people that don't. But I think most fans of the series were quite pleased with this one. There's the potential that we could call Ion Fury a hidden gem first-person shooter, and it's developed by the legendary 3D Realms. It plays exactly like Duke Nukem, and it features Shelley Bombshell Harrison, who is trying to destroy Dr. Jadis. I believe that doctor is voiced by the original Duke Nukem voice actor, and I had an absolute blast playing through this great game. It's only £6.79, it's 66% off at the moment, the cheapest it's ever been. And in terms of content, it's only a single player, but it's reasonably long for a first-person shooter, around about 15 to 20 hours. A fantastic game in its own right, but also one that's brilliant if you've got kids around about 5 to 7 years old, because they can just pick up a controller and play together. It has 2-player co-op, and it's a simplistic top-down action RPG, but it also has some level of challenge in there. This is a good one, kind of, if they've come from some easier games and then you're moving up, but it's also a nice one to play through on your own. There's not a huge amount of depth here though, if you're after something more complex, hence why I've got it down as one of the kids' picks. And this had my kids running around the garden giving out revival hugs, because that's how you bring back a player if one of you falls. That is possibly the most awesome thing I've ever heard, and it's only 1.6 gigabytes. Then we've got Tales of Iron, featuring Doug Cockle, the voice of Geralt of Rivia, as the narrator. This is a beautiful and equally unusual Metroidvania from Oddbug Studio, down to just £10.99, that's a 50% discount, and it features almost Souls-like combat. There's lots of difficult boss fights. You can customize the way that it plays by changing your attack styles, change up whether you use heavy or light armor, which in turn affects your rolling, and there's also crafting in here as well. Absolutely worth the asking price here of £10.99 and a mere 1.7 gigabyte download for about 9 hours of content. Death's Door only just had one sale and now it's seen another one. It's now 35% off, taking it down to £11.69. It's a brilliant game. You play as a small crow. It has that top-down isometric perspective. There are some really good boss fights in here and you're completely free to roam wherever you want. There are a few different weapon types. There's ranged and melee, and it's a lot darker than you might first think. There's a main hub area where you can upgrade, and it's got a really interesting story. That one's just 2.7 gigabytes and around about 15 hours to do absolutely everything. One of the earliest all patched up redemption stories was Pine. At the moment it's only £3.89, that's 80% off. And look anywhere and the reviews are just appalling. But we revisited it many times. And finally it's reached a state where it's good enough to play and good enough to enjoy. There's actually technically a lot going on here. There's a persistent world with many different factions. You carry out missions and that affects your standing with each one. It takes a little bit of time to get into. The combat has a lock-on mechanic and you can dodge out the way and jump in for swipe attacks, but it's one that's worth persevering with. The survival mechanics actually work quite well, and while the load times still aren't quite as good as they should be, once you're in game it's actually fine. Yeah, I enjoyed this one quite a lot. I'm interested to see what they do with the sequel. I'm calling the Touryst another hidden gem. I know a lot of you might know about it, but it comes from Shin Multimedia. Those guys have some exceptional games, and this is one of my favourites on Switch. I always say it, but it gave me those Little Big Adventure vibes from when I was a kid, and just the ability to sail from island to island with no real purpose sometimes, but at other times solving the mysteries of the places, boss fights in air quotes that require you to solve different puzzles, and then strange mini games where you might go surfing or play some games in the arcade or maybe fly a drone. Really enjoyed it. Super quirky, love the art style, and it is a mere 245 megabyte download. You're looking at about 8 to 10 hours. This is another one that could just as easily be classed as a hidden gem. It's Gato Roboto. It's down 50% to just £3.59. Developed by Doinksoft and published by Devolver Digital, it's a Metroidvania in a very simplistic, almost Game Boy-like style. Don't be put off by those visuals, it's an absolute corker. And as I'm sure you figured out, you play as a little cat, and it's very short. You can complete this one in around about 4 hours. It's a nice, concise, and enjoyable experience. It also only clocks in at 905 megabytes. Oh my word, we might as well just call them all a hidden gem, shall we? Next up we've got Unmetal. This is essentially Unepic Fran, if you know that name, a legendary indie developer. This is his version of Metal Gear Solid if it was framed against Hot Shots Part 2. Incredibly tongue-in-cheek. The jokes might not resonate with everyone, but I just found the whole thing absolutely brilliant. It's as close as you're going to get to classic Metal Gear Solid on the Nintendo Switch, and it's completely bonkers satire. It has lots of the stealth mechanics you'd hope for, and some funny boss fights as well. Really enjoyable 10 to 15 hour long game, only 573 megabytes. Void Bastards is a brilliant roguelite on Switch, but the deluxe edition, being just £11.19 with a 60% reduction, is a steal. It includes the bang-tidy DLC, and if you've ever watched Red Dwarf, this is as close as you're going to get to it on Switch. It's a first-person experience, so once you've chosen your next destination, you can board ships, creep through the corridors trying to loot them, but the enemies on board will be basically paying you out, giving you grief, and they all sound like grumpy old Englishmen. It's very unusual, but does roguelite in a completely unique way. There are loads of different weapons that you can find, and every time you board a ship, you never know quite what you're going to see, hear, or do. Well worth checking out the full review of this one if you're interested. It's a 3 gigabyte download and about 15 to 20 hours. There seems to be a bit of a theme here. This is my other kid's pick. This was basically one of the first Metroidvanias I could get my kids to play, and it's Hunter's Legacy, the perfect edition, which is just £1, 57. That's just stupid, isn't it? It's around about 8 hours long. It's quite simplistic, but I had a blast with it. You've got different magic, swords, you've got a bow that you can use, and it's got a classic story of good, hopefully, triumphing over evil, except it's loads of cats. They added in a new mini-map for this version. It makes it much easier to navigate, and the combat's simplistic. It's just easy to get into. A nice little bite-sized Metroidvania. I'll go on then, let's have one more hidden gem. It's the Eyes of Ara. This one's only £3.50, that's 70% off, and it's only a 482 megabyte download. If you were a fan of games like Myst or Ryzen, then you'll enjoy this one, but it's much more fluid, it's a bit easier to play. There are loads of different puzzles for you to work your way through, and it's actually won a number of awards. Although it doesn't look like it, the whole experience is fully 3D, and if you like to tax your brain, then this might work for you. What I was really pleased was they actually used cursor-based motion controls. It makes it much easier to just point around in a game like this, and it's suitably mysterious. Enjoyed it a lot. 482 megs, absolute bargain. If you're interested, there are some other first-party games that you might be looking at. Things like Zelda Link's Awakening is a great game. The first-party stuff on discount is always 33%, so that's what you'll get. First up on our avoids list is Bakugan, Champions of Astroya. This game was a disaster. I remember we were invited to sit through kind of a briefing for press before it released, and I was looking at it like, is that really as bad as it looks? Because you've got your Bakugan fighting, but you're just running around the outside collecting tokens and throwing it at them, and it's the most dull thing ever. As you'll see if you watch our full review, it turned out just as bad as it looked. So avoid it, it's rubbish. I think we've already mentioned it, but one that would be a good alternative would be Monster Sanctuary. That's on this sale at just £5.43, and although it's not the same perspective by any means, the side-scrolling Pokemon collecting there is way more enjoyable. And I think that is where we'll leave it for today. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. There's so many good games coming out now, it's just delightful. I mean, May was a disaster, and June is just looking incredibly good. I can't tell you what we're working on at the moment, but I can tell you it is awesome. So if you're new to the channel, then consider sticking around. Do save yourself 10% on all of these games using code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg to get your eShop vouchers, and be assured that I will do the US version of this when the big US sale inevitably starts. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch Up. Cheers guys, see ya!